has ended, and that means a horror movie wrap-up. Hello everyone! Welcome on That Horror Chick, my channel where I ramble about all things horror. My name is Angie and I'm a huge horror fan. From books to movies, I like it all. The year is actually going pretty fast and we are already in March, which means that I'm going to give you guys my horror movie wrap-up from February. There are a couple of rewatches in this list and a couple of new movies. I think I watched around 17. Let's go through them all. We are going to start with the rewatches. In February, I rewatched 8 different movies. Some of them are because there is a sequel coming out, and some of them I just wanted to see again. I am probably not the only horror fan who has comfort movies that you will just watch again and again and again. The first movie is one that you all probably know. I am talking about Child's Play. We all know the story from Child's Play. It is definitely a cult classic. The story basically is about a serial killer who possesses a doll, and the serial killer refuses to die. I am not going into detail too much because I do not want to spoil the whole movie if you haven't seen it yet, but it definitely is a cult classic and Chucky definitely is a horror icon. I actually still want a Chucky doll for my collection. Wouldn't it be fun if one of these dead dolls were Chucky? I would love that, personally. Child's Play is a movie I will always be biased about, so I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. This is simply because it is one of those horror movies that really shaped the genre. And I gotta be honest, I just love 90s and 2000s horror movies. I will always rate those a little higher than newer 1 or 70 ones. And that might be a little bit of an unpopular opinion. I have the attention span of a squirrel, and I got to be honest, the older a movie is, the more it takes for me to concentrate on it. Most older movies I have to watch in several parts, but this is not the case for Child's Play. I just love it every time that I see it. The next rewatch is The Conjuring, and you probably already guessed it. I watched this movie because there is a new one coming out. Somewhere in the coming months, The Conjuring Last Rites will be released. I am very excited for this one. To prepare for this new sequel, I decided to rewatch all of the Conjuring movies. The movie is about a family that is terrorized by a dark presence. To get rid of this presence, they call in the help of Ed and Lorraine Warren. Again, this is one of those movies that I'm a little bit biased against, so I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. A funny story about this movie is that I actually watched it the first time in theaters, and it scared the living daylight out of me. I also very clearly remember that I was with a friend of mine, and she was so scared and she was screaming all the time, and it really became a core memory. And there are some scenes from this movie that simply live rent-free in my head. For example, the clapping scene. That scene was just chef's kiss. I loved it so much. The next horror movie is Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. This definitely was a movie that I actually didn't want to rewatch. But since I didn't see Blood and Honey 2 yet, I kinda wanted to get back into the story. Blood and Honey is of course about Winnie the Pooh after Christopher Robin abandons him and his friends in the 100-acre woods. Christopher Robin had to leave for college. He had all grown up. And when he returns, he doesn't find the kind bear that is living in his memories. Instead, he finds something much darker. Pooh and Piglet are out for revenge, and they embark on a bloody rampage. Now, I gotta be honest here, I am a sucker for anything body horror and gore. This movie definitely delivers that. Body horror is one of my favorite horror genres. And this movie definitely delivers some very creative kills. Surprisingly enough, I had a really good time rewatching this movie. But I gotta be honest, I followed it up with Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2. Seeing these two one after the other definitely elevates the first movie. That being said, I couldn't really rate this movie very high. It was just a 2.5 stars out of 5 for me. This is mainly because there are some errors in there that kind of bother me. It is a fun movie, I did enjoy watching it, but it definitely is not the best horror movie out there. Still, I think paired with Blood and Honey 2, it is actually very fun to watch. The next 5 movies are from the same franchise. I am talking about the Final Destination franchise. You can probably already guess it, but I watched these 5 movies because Final Destination Bloodlines is coming out in May. I am so freaking excited for this one. Final Destination is one of my favorite horror franchises. Another one of my favorites is Saw. I really like the body horror. If people are dying in the most gruesome way possible, I will like the movie. I watched 1 until 5 in the order that they came out. If you are not familiar with Final Destination, the story is pretty simple. One of the main characters gets a premonition about a huge disaster taking place. And due to this premonition, they can actually avoid said disaster. But did they actually escape that? One by one, the survivors start to die. This is actually the red thread for every Final Destination movie, but the disasters are different every time. In the first movie, it is an airplane crash, but I think it's the disaster out of the second movie that I remember the most. I am talking about the highway disaster. Until this day, I will get nervous when we're driving behind a truck with logs. I am just always afraid one is going to get loose and that the disaster will just happen right in front of me. And I know from my friend group that I'm not the only one suffering from this. I am pretty sure that this disaster has traumatized an entire generation. The third Final Destination movie is actually the first one that I ever saw. And this one is about a roller coaster crash. Now, I have to be honest here, I am a huge theme park fan, and that means that I also know that this crash is close to impossible. However, I still had a lot of fun watching this movie. Sometimes you just gotta have to shove your logics aside and just enjoy it. The fourth Final Destination movie is my least favorite. This disaster takes place on a racetrack. It heavily depends on its special effects and it just feels a little sloppy to me. I still enjoyed all of the death scenes, but this one is simply the least out of all 5 movies. Surprisingly enough, this Final Destination movie has a scene that will stick with me forever. I just keep thinking about it. I am talking about the escalator scene. I will now forever get nervous when getting off an escalator, afraid to be like crushed in the machinery. Then we have Final Destination 5, which is one of my favorites actually. This is mostly because of the incredible plot twist at the end. I'm not going into too much details because that will be a huge spoiler. But let me just tell you, my mind was blown. In the 5th Final Destination, the disaster that takes place is a bridge collapse. And this one was actually really nerve-wracking. I absolutely loved following the characters while they were trying to get out. And this movie once again has some pretty creative kills. That is my favorite part of Final Destination, just watching how that is going to take their lives. Some of these deaths are actually quite complex. I think I will make a top 10 of my favorite Final Destination deaths somewhere soon, probably after Bloodlines has come out. I am very curious what they are going to bring us with a new movie. Let's go through my ratings real quick. The first Final Destination I rated 3.5 out of 5. This is mostly because it is the movie that set the franchise off. It definitely set the tone for all the movies to come. And because this is the very first movie of this franchise, I rated it a little bit higher. 3.5 stars felt really fair to me. I thought the movie was better than a 3-star, but it didn't feel quite like a 4-star. So I decided to go with the middle road and rated 3.5 stars. Final Destination 2 rated a little bit higher for me. I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. This is mostly because of the disaster that takes place in the premonition. That one just sticked with me for years and years and years. It definitely lived rent-free in my head. And if you manage to traumatize an entire generation, then you definitely did something right. Then Final Destination 3, which I rated 3 out of 5 stars. This was the first Final Destination that I personally saw, and I still love it for that. It definitely introduced me to the franchise. But when I saw the other movies in the franchise, something just felt a little off, like the whole picture thing. This didn't quite make sense with the other movies. In Final Destination 3, it felt like the rules were just a little bit off. Yet it still deserves 3 out of 5 stars, simply because all of the death scenes were just so much fun. And this is the movie with one of the best scene transactions that I have seen. I am talking about the 10 beds to the 2 coffins transaction. It was just so well done. I loved it to bits. And that scene was just gruesome. Then we have my lowest rated Final Destination movie, Final Destination 4, which I only rated 2.5 stars out of 5. I cannot really explain why. It is more like a feeling thing for me, but this movie was just not doing it for me. Though the deaths were really enjoyable and they were more than bloody, there just was something off. Maybe it was because some of the characters were a little less likable. Well, I did establish an emotional connection with the former characters. In this specific Final Destination movie, this was not the case. They just fell a little flat. And then we have Final Destination 5, which I rated 4 out of 5 stars. This was just such a fun movie and it brought new life to the franchise. And just let me tell you, that twist ending, I loved it to bits. I would just keep saying it and saying it and saying it. I did not see it coming. And that while I am definitely a person that checks the background details. Now that I have rewatched it, I do see all of the little details that foreshadow this. They are very subtle, but they are definitely there. If you guys would like me to make a video about all the foreshadowing in this movie, then please let me know in the comments down below. Then we are going to move onwards to the movies that I watched for the first time. And the first one in this list is Audition. This one has been on my to-watch list for quite a while already. I heard so many good stories about this that I got really curious. It did take me a while to finally watch this movie, but I definitely was not disappointed. This movie is about a man that is looking for a new wife, 7 years after his first one died. He takes advantage of the fact that they work for a filming company. And they start doing auditions to find the perfect new wife. After a series of interviews, he gets charmed by this woman called Asami. But soon things take a twisted turn, as Asami isn't as she seems to be. I rated this movie 4 out of 5 stars, and when I started it, I did not really know what to expect. I always try to go into movies blind, or at least as blind as possible, which means that I didn't see a trailer of this movie, or that I looked up any spoilers. I did know that there was some body horror in this one, which was the reason why I really wanted to watch it. Now I have to be honest, because I would have liked a little bit more gore. But when it got started, it really got started. Again, I have the attention span of a squirrel, and it took me a few tries to watch this movie entirely. Eventually, I had to split this movie in 3 different watches, but I did complete it. But that is more of a me thing than that it's something wrong with this movie. It is an Asian horror, and I do have a soft spot for those. Ringu is one of my favorite movies, and this kinda has the same vibe if you ask me. If you enjoy Asian horrors, I definitely recommend watching this movie. The next movie is one that I got recommended on TikTok. This movie is Grafted. This movie is about a brilliant Chinese student who gets a scholarship into a prestigious New Zealand university. However, she craves popularity, but she doesn't fit the bill. Soon she discovers a way to achieve exactly what she wants. I rated this movie 3.5 stars out of 5. I went back and forth a little bit between 3 stars and 4 stars, and I was actually going to give it 4 stars, but it just didn't feel right. I am very much someone who goes by emotions when rating a movie. And while this movie did bring up quite a few emotions for me, I don't know, it just wasn't a 4-star watch. But then again, 3 stars felt like too little. Eventually I gave it 3.5 stars. But if I could, I would have given it a 3.75. I did really enjoy the body horror in this movie. By now you guys probably know that is my favorite thing in horror ever. I just love all of the gruesome and gory details. And while this movie more or less went exactly how I expected, it was still a lot of fun. I just told you guys that I watched the first Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey, and that I also watched the second one. This movie is about the life of Christopher Robin after the murders. He suffers from PTSD and has quite some struggles with getting his life back on the road. The little town that he lives in doesn't trust him, and it is very clear that they think that he is indeed the murderer. Pooh Piglet, Owl and Tiger find their lives endangered after they are revealed to the world. So they set out of the 100-acre woods to go on a rampage again. I rated this movie 3 out of 5 stars. It was such an improvement from the first movie. You definitely noticed that they had a way bigger budget this time around. The monster designs also felt way more monstrous. Especially Owl. Owl was just creepy as hell. Something that I really loved about this movie is that it had Easter eggs to horror classics. Personally, I think that these two movies have to be watched together. That way, I enjoyed it way more than watching them separately. Then we move on to a movie of which I already had seen the American remake. This movie is Wreck. We follow a television reporter and a cameraman when they are sealed into a building. Soon we discover they are locked inside with something terrifying. I rated this movie 4 out of 5 stars, simply because I enjoyed it way more than the American remake. Though I have to admit that the American remake was following the same storyline quite well. It definitely felt like I was watching the same movie, but just in a different language. Personally, I love it when American remakes do that. The closer a remake stays with the original storyline, the more I enjoy it. At least that is my personal opinion. I did think that some of the performances were a little bit over dramatic. All with all, I am very happy that I gave this movie a chance, even though I had already seen the American remake. As I said before, I think this one is just better. I am going to butcher the name of this movie, but if you have the choice between Quarantine and Wreck, I would choose Wreck. The next movie is one that became one of my favorites instantly. I just loved it so much. I got this movie recommended on Instagram and I am very happy that I decided to watch it. This movie was the Belko Experiment. As you guys know, I really love my body horror and this movie definitely delivers that. We follow 80 American workers who are locked inside of their office. Then an unknown voice orders them to participate in a very twisted game. They are supposed to follow the orders of this voice exactly, and otherwise there will be consequences. This voice starts ordering them to kill their colleagues. And this causes some of the workers to show the worst side of humanity. I rated this movie 5 out of 5 stars. I just loved it so much. And it definitely is a movie that I will be rewatching somewhere soon. I even think that this movie might become a comfort movie for me. The way that they show the ugly side of humanity is really well done. And I did get emotionally attached to the characters. So when some of my favorite characters started to die, I did catch myself crying a little. The body horror in this movie is pretty good. I really love the way that the workers started to kill each other. And if you are like me and your favorite genre are body horrors, and you also really like movies that show the ugly side of humanity, the Belko Experiment definitely is a recommendation. Then we have a movie that I also rated 5 stars. I finally watched The Descent. This was a movie that had been recommended to me time and time again. And people said that I really had to watch it because it was just my type of movie. And it turns out that it actually was. I loved it to bits. This movie follows a woman who has lost her husband and child in a tragic accident. 6 months later, she meets up with a couple of friends to go cave diving. This adventure goes horribly wrong when the cave collapses and locks them inside. They need to find a way out. But are they the only ones in this cave? I rated The Descent 5 out of 5 stars and I definitely get the hype around it. It was just such a good movie and it really gave me the feeling as if you were descending into hell with the characters. Another thing that this movie did really well was giving the watcher the feeling of claustrophobia. The Descent is definitely a movie that I wouldn't mind rewatching, and I do think that it is a must-see for every horror fan. Then we have a new release. For Valentine's Day, I watched Hard Eyes. In this movie, we have a serial killer that goes after couples, especially when they are going on a date on Valentine's. When two co-workers are mistaken for a couple, the Hard Eyes killer goes after them. And now they must spend Valentine's Day running for their lives. I rated this movie 3 out of 5 stars. Honestly, I didn't expect to enjoy this movie as much as I did. I was afraid it was going to be another mediocre slasher. But the movie has a very strong start with a very creative and gruesome kill. Now I have to be honest that the other kills in this movie are not as creative, but this first kill definitely set the tone. The movie is quite a fun slasher actually, and I really did enjoy watching the killer go after couples. And there definitely is a twist that I didn't see coming. Another thing that I really liked is that I didn't guess who the killer was. Usually I can figure this out by little details in the background. But with Hard Eyes I was very much distracted by all the drama. And I think this definitely did the movie well. It just made it so much more enjoyable and made the ending quite a surprise. I also watched a gothic horror last month. I think you can probably guess it, but I finally got around to watching Nosferatu. This movie is about the obsession between a haunted young woman and a vampire. It is based on a very old silent movie of the same name. Before watching this movie, I actually saw the old one first. I rated this movie 4.5 out of 5 stars. It is definitely a slow burn, so if you are a fan of fast-paced horror movies, this might not be the movie for you. But I think that is the telltale sign of the gothic horror genre. It actually stayed pretty close to the original storyline, and I could definitely appreciate that. They didn't overcomplicate, kept the storyline quite simple and the cast of characters small. And I think this definitely did the movie good. Now I have said a couple of times that I have quite a short attention span. But this movie I just watched in one go. I was just completely charmed by it. From the way that it was shot, to the colors that they used, to the costume design, I just loved every bit of it. So I think this movie definitely deserves a 4.5 star rating. I am going to film a separate review of this movie, because I have quite a lot to say about it. The next movie might be one of the weirdest that I ever saw. This movie appeared on my For You page on TikTok and did spark quite some curiosity in me. I am talking about Good Boy. This movie was just so weird. It is about a young woman who starts dating a millionaire heir, but he has some very peculiar tastes. Christian, the millionaire heir, lives together with Frank. And Frank is a man who is dressed in a dog costume. He tells Sigrid to act as if Frank is a real dog. She is not supposed to treat him like a human. This movie was just so weird in all of the best ways. Though it was not the best movie that I ever saw, I still rated it 3 out of 5 stars. Just because it was so incredibly weird. I didn't know where the movie was going, and every turn was a surprise for me. The weirdness of this movie is definitely what sold the plot for me. I do like to read some bizarro fiction, and this movie definitely has the same vibe. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments down below which movies you have seen in the last month. I am always looking for new recommendations, so if you know a movie that I should watch, please let me know as well. If you want to stay up to date about all the movies that I see, you can follow me on Letterboxd. I also have an Instagram where I post about the movies that I am watching now and again. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Please keep in mind to always check your triggers, and a movie that I liked might not be a movie that you liked. Please leave a comment down below, leave a thumbs up, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done that yet. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye!